My name is Tony Russo, and thank you for joining us for our Marketing Summit, your blueprint for funeral business success. We've got a great presentation that'll be coming to you today. We have first Damon Wenig. He will be presenting on standout or fade out, creating a brand that can't be ignored at about 1 o'clock. And he may or may not go the whole hour. And if he does or doesn't, we'll start the second presentation, which is Aaron Butler, Authentic Online Engagement, Content Strategies for Funeral Professionals. Directly after, we'll take a 5-minute break so we can all stretch and whatnot. If you have any questions, if you go over to the right of your panel, you will see there's a place for asking questions. You can just type them in there. I will ask them as we go along. And if you have any questions that you save to the end, we will also have an opportunity to have questions at the end of the presentation. And I think that is it. So I'm going to bring on Damon right now and get him started. Welcome. Good morning.
Hey, Tony. Good morning. Good morning.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave you to yourself, but I'll be right here. I'll be the voice of God if you need me. And we'll see you at the end of the presentation.
Perfect. Well, wonderful. My name is Damon Wenig. I'm so glad to be here. It's a joy to join you all. I serve at Homesteaders Life Company as our Director of Partner Marketing, really meaning that I get to spend time working with funeral professionals, building their brands and helping them offer more resources and more value, especially around their pre-need marketing. But as it relates to our profession, I'm actually also a licensed funeral director and embalmer, live in Wisconsin. And although I am in a funeral home here, not in Wisconsin right now, and my family has a funeral home in a group of funeral homes in Wisconsin, and I had led them as our operator and before selling. And really that has informed a lot of what I do and why I do it. Initially growing up in a funeral family, I wanted nothing to do with funeral service. I repelled against it in pretty much every direction, but eventually I found this is really my calling. This is where I love to be. I worked in marketing in Chicago, in agency marketing, and did my undergraduate and graduate degree in marketing, and then eventually came back to the profession of so much meaning and so much care that I know all of us share. But really what we're going to do today is talk about marketing in the context of funeral service. Historically, funeral service, I think we really looked at the at-need perspective, and that's really changed in the past 30 years as we broadened that perspective to everything that happens before the funeral, everything that happens at the funeral during the at-need, and then everything that happens after the funeral during aftercare. And it's really began to flatten and build this continuum of care that people understand that it's no longer one or the other, it's all. And so I want us to put that context, whatever seat of the bus you may sit in, we talk about it in a holistic perspective, because what happens before, what happens during, and what happens after all heightens our ability to serve consumers well. But I want to start by just sharing a little story. It was 2021, and my wife and I were headed to Nashville to NFDA, and we were at a layover at an airport whose name I won't mention, and sitting at the gate waiting for our flight and talking with some of the people. This woman, very opinionated, begins to share about her thoughts about the decor and the aesthetic of the airport. And I'll never forget, she kind of shouts or screams out, "This place looks like a funeral home. It's disgusting." And now my funeral self, my ears are trained, right? Like when I hear someone talking about funeral, casket, cremation, burial vault, my ears automatically tune to it. So naturally, I kind of leaned into the conversation at that point, and I chuckled and I said, "What do you mean?" And she didn't hold back, right? dark, dingy, cold. She's using all these very strong words and basically describing a middle school gym at midnight, right? Something not very proud that we would be proud of in our profession. We kept talking and the conversation kind of veered off, and eventually she brought it back and she said, well, why are you going to Nashville? And I grinned and said, well, I'm joining the world's largest gathering of funeral directors. And her face was priceless, right? She felt like equal parts caught and horrified. But here's why this story has stuck with me over the years. It's because first impressions shape someone's perception, right? Her first impression at some point, somewhere, her experience of a funeral home led her to believe that this is what all funeral homes look like, or this is the perspective. Whether she had it in person or just cognitively in her mind, it doesn't actually matter. And the reality is that first impressions stick. And in our world, perception is branding. It's what families believe about you. It's not necessarily what we're thinking we are communicating. It's actually really what the families already believe before they ever meet us. And today, families are forming those impressions way faster than ever before, right? Most of us, the time online is when they're making that first impression. Before you ever had the chance to extend a handshake and a warm greeting, some impression has already been formed. And I think the reason that that story sticks with me is because it underscores the importance of how we communicate and what we communicate. And families aren't now just comparing us to other funeral homes. They're comparing us to the brands that they experience every single day. And that's really our new reality. They compare us to the best brands, right? The ones that they interact with all of the time. So that means that our experience expectations are actually set outside of funeral service. And then they train our customer what they expect. I'll never forget one time a customer had said something about a funeral home website, and they said, it looks like a doctor's office website from the 1990s, and they did not mean it as a compliment, by the way. But really, I think what that taught me as well is that these tiny first impressions accumulate into larger conversations. And that's our new reality. Families no longer say we picked another funeral home. Rather, they just don't even consider us in the first place. So families are judging us through this, this mindset. Let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the reality check. 74% of families considered only one funeral home when pre-arranging. I want us to really kind of think about that. Families aren't maybe shopping around, albeit we know that that number is increasing, especially around certain consumer preferences and depending on what they are looking for and their desired services. Generally speaking, they're picking whoever's already in their head, right? That means that if you're not at the top of mind, you're not even in consideration. You're not even in the game, right? You don't lose a call that you were never going to get in the first place. And that's why branding is so important. It's not just about awareness. It's actually about the first, being the first in their mind, being the only name in their mind, that when they are ready to have that conversation of pre-planning, or when they're ready to make that difficult phone call, they know exactly who they would select. So how do we get to that spot? Where do we go? Really, it starts with the understanding that families, what families really value. Yes, understanding that differentiation matters more than ever. The heart of differentiation really is value alignment. And brands that understand this, understand that families don't just buy features, meaning products and services, but really they buy values. 64% form relationships based on brands, on shared values. So 64% form relationships with brands based on values. Harvard Business Review. 77% actively buy from brands that share their value. What families really want to know is, do you align with me? Is this going to work? Will you guide me with compassion and clarity and confidence through these next steps? And the strongest brands already know that. I think we in funeral service look to us and our perspective often, but we can learn a lot when we look outside of funeral service and recognize the power of branding, the power of marketing from some of the world's biggest brands. And what I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking about some of those brands and those highlights. Let's look first at Nike, right? Nike is like the masterclass in branding. We know that they don't really just sell shoes and apparel with their advertising. If you've ever watched a Nike commercial, it's exact opposite of that. It's everything that surrounds and elicits the feeling, the motivation of their product. Just do it isn't just a catchy tagline, it's actually their value. And they recognize that because Nike sells motivation. Nike sells the ability to make champions, to find victory, all of these things, breaking barriers, overcoming odds. Their message essentially is not about their product, but it's about what their product can do. Essentially, it's about you. It's about us and the way that we will grow. Differently spoken, Nike shows us the power of belief in ourselves. So brands like Nike show us that, but brands like Apple show us something different. If we go back, right now we see Apple, it's very easy to see the success of the brand. But if we go back decades, in 1997, Apple wasn't the giant that they are today, right? They were actually on the brink of collapse at that time. IBM, Microsoft, Intel dominated the tech landscape. And they really built their value prop, especially their marketing, around this rational belief that processors and lower prices and technical superiority was really the recipe to own the entire market share. And as such, Dell spent millions to push ahead of the pack on that advertising. Dell's entire marketing campaign was built around one word, and it was think. It was their goal to find the most technologically savvy individuals and communicate that we have a product that works for you. But the problem was that think was about the machine. Yes, think was about their product, not necessarily about the person. It was about efficiency, but it wasn't the aspiration of what their customer really desired to have with that product. In that, Apple looked at that and said, we're not going to win that game, right? We're not going to out Dell. So instead, they turned that narrative on the head and they launched a different campaign called Think Different. It wasn't just a tagline, it really was their manifesto, yes, to create a direct response, yes, to Dell, but also to almost provoke that in this world, we don't just sell computers, we're actually selling creativity. We are selling the ability to be dreamers and rebels and people who believe that they can create something above and bigger than themselves. Instead of marketing what the Mac could do or did, they actually messaged to who you could become. And that's really where this took off. You see, this is from 1997. Einstein, Gandhi, Amelia Earhart, Picasso, people who believed in challenging convention. Essentially, they made us all believe that by buying a Mac, that we were aligning ourselves with these people. with the creators. It wasn't just about the tech. It wasn't just about the product. It was about belonging to a community of innovators. And that is still the way those brands are. Yes, they are people who are very passionate about their Mac or about their iPhone. They have no other way for it. So Apple stood out essentially because of the fact that they told a different story. While competitors were on the rational side, they built into the emotional brand. Instead of falling into the same pattern of what everyone else was doing, they looked intentionally and sought to do something different. And if we're careful, if we're not careful, we fall into the pattern of doing exactly what everyone else is doing. That's something that we call the sea of sameness. And it's really the fact that everyone is using the same words. When I look at funeral service, I like to look at the website right away because I think of certain words. And these two words are probably on more funeral home websites, Facebook pages, billboards than any other: trusted and caring. And if we're being honest, of course, those are very important words, but they also aren't differentiating, right? It's a beautiful word. It's a beautiful meaning for our calling, but it doesn't actually differentiate us from anyone. And the truth is, if our tagline fits perfectly on our competitor's website, it doesn't actually belong to us. It's just wallpaper. And at that point, it really is just a repeated message back and forth, and it continues to just blend in. And that's really what we see. Customers oftentimes see in a moment of profound grief that they aren't looking for generic promises. They're looking for something very tangible that they can connect with, that truly stands out. And really, that's what we want to talk today about. We're going to go through 3 pillars to creating a successful and meaningful brand that stands out and that doesn't just blend in. It doesn't become the wallpaper on the wall, and it can cut through the sea of sameness. My wife often talks about my kids and even me sometimes trying to get her attention, and we'll be in the kitchen and my children will say, "Mom, mommy, mama, mama," and everyone is shouting her name, and she always has this moment where she says, when everyone is shouting the same thing, I cannot understand anyone. I can't hear anything, because we're all trying to get her attention using the same word at the same time in the same form. And it couldn't be truer for our marketing. The way that we break apart of the sea of sameness, we start by asking, what do we sell? If we only define what we sell by the products and the services, we miss the bigger truth. The most powerful brands in the world, as we just talked about, don't just sell products, they really sell the meaning. And the benefit for funeral providers is whatever area you are in, pre-need, at-need, or aftercare, we meet a incredibly emotional connection with a consumer. So the ability to draw in meaning and emotion in our brand is really innately there, right? It doesn't take as much work to drum up that emotion to play into that important sector, because it's already there. And that's really where positioning comes in. Pillar 1 is positioning, which is simply the space that your brand holds or owns in your customer's mind. When you think of positioning, think of just that. It's the space that you own, your funeral home. Simple, quick word, quick thought that you own in your customer's mind. It's not your logo, it's not your slogan, it's the mental real estate that you actually occupy. And when you think about a lot of brands, they tend to occupy just one word, right? They don't get a full sentence, they don't get a lot of real estate, they just get a little bit. You think of Volvo, you might think of safety. You think of Ferrari, maybe you think of speed. You don't get to be everything. They picked a word and they owned that word. So let's talk about our funeral homes. If I say your funeral home's name, what's one word that you think your community thinks of? Maybe even the next step that your community would say back to you. Is it comfort? Is it tradition? Is it meaning? Is it reminiscence? Or even worse, do they not think of you at all? Do they think of that funeral home down the street? If you don't define our position, someone else will. So it isn't necessarily about what you say about yourself. It's about what they say when you're not in the room. And really, we have to think about that critically. What word do we own? Because as we mentioned, that word gets taken by others, probably Google or an AI search generation if we're not real careful. And then suddenly our brand is equated with a 4-star Google review, right? That's not our brand. Our brand is larger than that. And nobody wants that kind of brand, yes? So brand positions. Positioning is not an accident. What we see here is a positioning brand map. Every brand, whether they know it or not, is actually on this positioning map somewhere. The x-axis is the price, low to high, and the y-axis is the perceived value. So how much people feel like they're getting from the experience. Not necessarily what they're actually getting, right? So it's not the value, but it's the perceived value. Looking at this chart, I mean, Walmart sitting right down there at the bottom left, and that's pretty obvious, right? Walmart doesn't own luxury, it owns familiarity, it owns low prices. You don't go to Walmart because you want it to be meaningful and memorable, although it can be memorable at times. You go because you know exactly what you're going to get, and you know that you're going to get low prices, probably some long lines, and maybe a story to tell if you go past 9 p.m., right? You kind of know what you're getting. And the same is true of one up on that ladder is IKEA, right? Still low price, but yet people feel like they're getting a little bit of design value, maybe a little bit of experience with it. They walk through the store, they feel like they're understanding some sort of design effort, and they leave feeling very empowered by the bookshelf that they have to put together. God bless them. Then you look at Jeep. Jeep is a lifestyle, right? It's about adventure. People don't just buy a Jeep, they become obsessed about their Jeep. They buy, what is it, the rubber duckies, and I have no idea why, but they are very proud of it, and they are a Jeep owner. Toyota sits right in the middle. Not flashy, not expensive, but perceived as extremely high value. You don't brag about having a Toyota, but you do brag about how long it lasts, right? You brag about how many miles you got out of your Camry. Going on, Apple, premium price, but also high value. Four Seasons, continuing, right? Top of the corner, high price, yet ultra high value or perceived value. No one stays at the Four Seasons because it's the cheapest option. They stay because they know my dog's name to memory, right? And they reference it. All these random things that are perceived value that fit along the chart. Here's the point. Strong brands don't just fight on our price alone. They actually fight on the value line, on the perceived value line. And the higher you are on the map, the less that price actually becomes a determining fact. But here's the reality. Good brands can be anywhere on the map. No one's going to argue that Walmart has a poor brand. They have a great brand. They know exactly who they are, and they've leaned into it. But one area that we have to be careful of is this area that we call the risky space. And that is the middle. And the middle is probably the most dangerous place to be, because it's not just low on price, but it also isn't high in exclusivity, right? So it's right smack dab in the middle, and you're not the cheapest, but you're also not seen as the high value. In other words, families don't simply remember you. They don't brag about you. They just kind of shrug. In the branding, that's kind of like being invisible, right? You can see how all these different brands land in distinct places, but the reality is all of these brands have specifically chose their place. Every great brand that you know starts with a simple and intentional choice, and it was about choosing their position, and that's what we do with our brands. None of them woke up by accident and said, Walmart, oops, I guess we're known for low prices, right? They built their whole business model around being intentional to having low prices and ease and convenience. With that, positioning is a matter of strategic decision, not accidental fate. It's important that we have to know exactly who we are and evaluate why we operate the way that we operate so that we can communicate that. We can't be all things to all people. And if we try to, people will see through that really quickly. They don't go to Walmart expecting to have the same experience as Target. And Target doesn't expect to have the same, experience as Amazon. They know their lane, and they generally try to stay there as they communicate about their brand. It's like going to a restaurant that has a very expansive menu, right? Like you flip through and you're seeing pizza and tacos and sushi. It's never a great sign. I prefer going to a restaurant that maybe has a line out the door, but all they serve is 3 tacos, and they know that they're really good at it. When we talk about brand equity, we're talking about the actual investment that they have in their brand. They know who they are, and they know that people are known for that. The strongest brands don't have to be everything to everyone. They pick something and they own it. And really, we talked exactly about this and highlighted it before. If you don't define your position, someone else will. Without positioning, you end up with a brand that looks like everyone else's. It's that repeated wallpaper that we talked about. So here's the danger. If you don't define your brand, someone else is going to define it. If you define your brand improperly, you're going to be seen as phony or illiterate to the consumer to knowing and understanding your brand. So with that, we have to understand that when we find our brand, it's important that we communicate it with consistency. Consistency always pays off. Consistency looks good, consistency feels good, and consistency pays well. I love this statistic. Consistent branding increases revenue by up to 23%. Why? It's because consistency builds recognition with your customer. When families see the same message over and over, they trust it a lot sooner than without any hesitation. So if you look and you feel the same on all of your mediums, it signals that there's important elements that you can communicate. But let's look at this. Brands with consistent presentation are 3.5 more likely to enjoy strong brand visibility. They found that by simply having that consistent presentation every time, you're actually not only having a greater visibility, you're scrolling past all the other people who look and feel just like the same. But when it feels unified, when it feels like they're cutting through noise, you actually become recognizable. Here's another statistic. 60% of millennials expect consistency across every channel. And that shouldn't be a surprise to us, right? A lot of us have really grown up in this world of quick, convenient, communicated brands, Starbucks and Amazon, where you see what happens online matches when you walk in the store, or what happens online is matched by what you receive in the package. When expectations break, trust then breaks. Think about the brands that you initially recognize, and that's because they're there not by accident, they're there by repetition. Repetition builds that reputation. It's over and over and over. It doesn't make you boring, it makes you consistent. And we say that consistency always pays off. It makes us believable, right? Families don't want to gamble on which version they're going to get of you. They want to know that they're going to get the same funeral home, the same message, the same people showing up again and again. Without that, we have a inconsistency of identity. And that's why this idea is so important. But what I want to do next is talk about and kind of drill a little bit further down into each consistency. There's 3 buckets of consistency that we're going to talk about. If I can move it on, perfect. The first, consistency of visuals. The first layer of this brand consistency really is the visual identity. It's the logos, it's the fonts, it's the palettes. These things matter, right? They create instant recognition. Take Airbnb's logo. It's consistent across every touch point, no matter what medium you're on, whether it's a website, app, you see a billboard, it doesn't matter. It's the logo that you see and you recognize. Logos are really shortcuts for our brains. They remind people who you are and why you matter. You see the Homesteaders logo at the top of every page, this little cabin, just again, consistent reminder of who you are. These tiny, tiny brand adjustments. But visuals go skin deep, right? But they're not necessarily the meaning. Think about it this way. If a logo is someone's face, you might recognize that person maybe at the grocery store, but that doesn't mean that you know that person, right? You've seen them, but you don't necessarily know them. And the danger is if you only rely on visuals, if you only rely on the aesthetic or the brand visuals, you've actually lost a great opportunity to be remembered. If all you got is a pretty logo and it's time to actually come to a decision of what they decide and you haven't connected with them on the heart, you've lost an opportunity. In other words, visual identity gets us in the door, but getting recognized and getting remembered, that's a different thing. So what is that? What gets you recognized and gets you remembered? That's where the belief comes in, and that's where messaging really stands strong. Consistency of messaging. Messaging creates meaning. It's the powerful element to your brand. It's that consistent layer. If we go back to Airbnb, we remember their logo, but they didn't just create a clever logo. They actually built something entirely on their brand that's a single human promise. And you're going to see it everywhere now that you have been brought it up. Look on the billboard. We imagine a world where you can belong anywhere. This idea of belong anywhere, whether you are renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Franklin, Indiana, or you are renting a French villa, it does not matter. There's a sense of belonging for everyone. It's universally true. Doesn't speak to their product. It speaks to their messaging. And how brilliant is that, right? The message travels far. My wife and I are Airbnb hosts, and we talk about all the time how even the language that they use to hosts is all about belonging. It says when you have a guest come, it says something to the effect of, thank you for creating places of belonging. They're finding ways, again, to make you repeat their brand back, make you connect with their messaging, their meaning. And that's the difference between a slogan and a story, right? One sits on a poster and the other shapes how people actually experience everywhere that your brand touches. I want to distill this into a funeral director perspective, a funeral service perspective, rather. Imagine every touch point that your funeral home has, whether that's sending out pre-need marketing, whether that's answering the phone, whether that's an online, a billboard, whatever it is. Is that a consistent place of messaging? Does it look and feel the same? Because the reality is, it should look different than your competitor. On the onset, Airbnb's competitors are hotels, right? But we see a lot of hotels still advertising free Wi-Fi and continental breakfast, right? That's something that they get, and that's important, but it's not something that connects with meaning, right? They're just advertising convenience and breakfast carbohydrates, right? Like that's the basic. So there's two principles that I want to really drill down on messaging. Consistency doesn't mean that we say the exact same words everywhere. It actually means that saying the same thing everywhere might need to be changed just a little bit. We adjust the format and the length and even the style a little bit. In other words, focus on channel tuning of the messaging, not channel changing. We don't need to change the whole channel and get into a whole different lane, but we need to adjust each of those slightly, depending on the medium. So if we're using a billboard, if we're using a website, maybe if we're using an aftercare text, a pre-need seminar invite, whatever it is, the medium changes, the messaging tweaks, but the actual promise never changes. The second point and principle for consistency in messaging is that you can't just repeat a slogan. We actually need evidence. One of my old mentors in marketing used to say proof beats poetry. In other words, you have to give evidence and have a track record to the brand, stories, stats, testimonials, case studies. You can say whatever you want, but there has to be some proof, right? It can't just be floral words. You have to actually have the rubber hitting the road and people believing the messaging. Otherwise, it's just all frippery. I want you to take a moment and visualize the last piece of marketing that your funeral home sent. You can kind of bring that to thought for a moment. Does it just sound poetic and nice? Or does it actually prove something? Is there a call to action that aligns with your messaging that moves your customer in some way? Maybe move them towards a decision, maybe move them towards an action or an emotion. Would families walk away saying that sounds nice, or do they walk away saying that feels true about Anderson Funeral Home? That feels true about Smith Funeral Home. And that brings us to this last layer of consistency in the second pillar, the consistency of experience. Values make us recognizable, messaging makes us meaningful, but experience is, again, that's where everything's made or break. The deepest and most important component of this is really that recognition. Yes, so it's been consistent across all the brands. Here you have some pictures of different mediums that they are showing up on. Granted, most of these are digital because Airbnb is a very digital company, but I want you to also think outside of the digital space. Are they having a consistent experience when walking in the library or walking in the lobby? Pardon me. If you have beautiful visuals on a website and wonderful social media that's active, but you walk into the funeral home lobby and there's no music, no greeting, no warmth, it's a sterile environment, the juxtaposition makes you lose trust. Experience is actually creating trust. Imagine if Airbnb said belong anywhere, but when you were booking it, it felt like a very cold, sterile process, like you were filing your taxes on TurboTax. No, the words that they use, how they have their booking process, they are intentional to make it all a meaningful experience. And that is exactly true in our funeral home application, right? That's kind of the line that we walk. Families need consistency, the reassurance that our process of your care, our professionalism are steady, but they also need personalization, right? And those are an important element. And that's what I want to move into next. Consistency joined with personalization makes you chosen. Consistent but personalized. I want us to think to our favorite streaming music, and mine was not always Spotify. I was a Pandora junkie. I know Pandora, like no one is anymore. I thought they were great, but if you kind of go back a little ways, 2017 was the inflection year for Spotify. On one side, Apple Music was gaining massive brand recognition. They had endless cash, ability to rapidly scale and grow that area. But on the other side, Pandora still had a really strong hold on that space, partly because they were really the first of that streaming area. But they weren't the default choice in customer minds. And then there was still Spotify, right? They were kind of like the best of both worlds, but they were oftentimes overlooked. They needed a way to stand out in the market where the streaming music was starting to feel like a commodity. So what was their solution? Their solution was a personalized experience. Spotify Wrapped. And if you do Spotify Wrapped, you probably just had a smirk on your face because people tend to love their Wrapped. Although I don't love sharing mine with everyone because I feel like it just, well, I also have kids, so there's a lot of Disney, lots of Disney. But Wrapped really became this virtual ritual, right? Every December, the campaign returns with the same consistent, pretty similar design, kind of playful, humorous tone, but it was always underscored by being personal to you. They had the data, right? The ability to actually drum up and know what you were listening to, that was in their infrastructure, that was in their architecture. But transforming it into this meaningful message saying, yes, we at Spotify play music, but we actually play your music. What did they do? They personalized it to you. And that's something that the others never quite caught on. And that's one of the reasons why they have full steam ahead, taken huge market share. Now imagine your funeral home has that same ability, your own version of Wrapped, something that makes you different, something that is unforgettable about your brand. It's not just enough to be a solid differentiator. It's about having the ability to communicate that differentiator very strategically. And that's our third and last pillar, is be clear what sets you apart. The louder the market gets, the more important that clarity wins. Families today are bombarded with messages in every directions. We know that social news feeds, endless notifications, they just pop up on your phone. It's instant noise, which means those who can be clear about what they provide can cut through that noise. So here's the danger. A lot of people assume that it's just clarity that wins, or they confuse volume with clarity. They think that, hey, if I throw out more and more direct mail pieces and I shout it louder, that somehow it's going to stick with the customer. And you've seen it, the same lunch and learn postcard over and over, different event, different sandwich, right, on the cover. It's kind of turnkey. That's not clarity. That's not clutter. It's actually damaging to your brand. That does not mean that the mail is damaging. It means when things are not done with intention and effectiveness, they dilute, they cloud the brand. choose the brand, choose the messaging, choose the differentiation. And clutter isn't harmless, right? We see, especially in that scenario, when people are just sending out mailing without a lot of attention to their audience, it backfires. Families start associating your brand with annoyance instead of trust. It doesn't just hurt your pre-need efforts, it actually erodes your at-need confidence in brand as well. And because of that, our team spends a lot of time taking special attention to, are we finding the right audience? Are we communicating the right way? And then are we finding a way to cut through the clutter through this messaging? If you remember Apple's Think Different campaign, that's why we can say think different, but people have to kind of think about, what was Dell's again? It's because it cut through, it was clear, it was different. Confusion kills that decision. Messages with the highest clarity boost comprehension and recall. Y'all, this is science. The neuroscience shows us this again and again. The brain processes a message quickly. If it processes a message quickly, it will stick. And that's why you remember some of those short and sweet things, but something that's multidimensional or multifaceted can be really hard. We talked about confusion kills decisions, clarity creates confidence. But clarity isn't just a marketing principle, it's really a roadmap, right? Every family takes a journey from awareness to consideration, preference, and action. And the clearer that we can be at each of these stages, the stronger that we will get them into that decision, whatever that be, whether that's calling us at the time of that need, or maybe setting up a planning scenario. But everyone's journey starts somewhere. The reality is, most of us, our journey today starts online. Our digital presence is our new front lobby. Think about how much time and attention that you spend on your front lobby. I hope that we're still spending time on our front lobby. I hope that we're walking through it every day and making sure that things are up to snuff, right? That the Kleenex box is filled, that the smell and the sound and the sights are excellent, right? To have a seamless experience for our guests. But our digital presence is the same. Are we walking through? Are we combing through? Are we finding what's effective? And are we tending to it regularly? Think about the last time that you needed something important, a doctor, a contractor, a restaurant. Where do we start? We start online. We start with that online really diagram that leads us out to a purchasing decision, right? Then we might recall, oh, that's right, Wenig Funeral Homes. I remember meeting, going to a funeral there. I remember meeting Damon, or whatever it be. It's really starts online and it goes in person. It's very different than what we've had in the past. Over half the families now start online, an FDA Consumer Awareness Survey from this past year. Over 50% of consumers visited a funeral home website while planning a service. 50%. Starts online, goes in person. Again, first impressions are digital impressions. We're rounding home here, so if you zoned out, zone back in. I appreciate your attentiveness, but I want to take a moment. I'm going to stop talking for 30 seconds, and I want you to really look at this and think through some of these, and maybe even snap a picture of this page or think about this with your staff. This is where theory really meets reality. Take your last touch points, Google listings, website, lobby experience, pre-need mailing, whatever it be. Now ask, would a family instantly know where they all came from the same brand? Or would it feel like different people running the show? Would it feel like different messaging or different emphases? Our branding lives in our touch points, and that's what families see and hear. So take a moment look at these, find one, and then I want you to audit what you think they might have experienced.
If I may, I do have a question if you'd like to
Yeah,
entertain one.
please.
I was you were just kind of burning along. I didn't want to break the spell.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
says here.
I can't see I can't
No,
see
that's
my
fine.
computer, so I apologize if you were.
No, this is a wrap up kind of question anyway, so I think that's why it's a good place. Um, Within the profession, what are real metrics we should use to measure whether our brand is resonating with the right audience?
Great question. One is going to be um, is testing your market, right? So finding ways to audit or test your market. How there's all sorts of organizations that can do that within funeral service, certainly, that can mail out, what do you think of this brand, et cetera. Or there's third-party marketing organizations that can do that. That's one way. That's really helpful. Another is by experiential. So asking people, right? When you think of Smith Funeral Home, what comes to mind? But I would say an important thing is also seeing where the rubber meets the road. Is your business growing? Is your brand growing? Do you have more opportunities to share that messaging in all the mediums in consistency? Does that answer your question, Tony? Or the question, I should say?
Yes, I think it does.
Okay.
They didn't ask a follow up, so I'll get
Yeah.
it. Say everybody's happy.
Perfect. Well, I want to wrap our time up here again by bringing this all together. Our messaging creates our meaning, right? Your brand is not your logo. Your brand is the single most powerful communicator of your value. When families can't tell your brand apart from the firm down the street, that's a problem. It's the messaging that creates the meaning, but it's also the experience. Families don't remember everything, but they do remember the promises that we tell them. So when we are making a promise or when we're not clear in that promise, we're actually providing confusion, clarity, right? In a noisy market, it's the brand that wins, not the loudest, but the clearest. Confusion kills decisions, clarity creates confidence. And that goes to the clarity that cuts through the noise, like I just said. It's that confidence, it's that ability to come back again and again. And when you put all three of these together, the meaning, the experience, and the clarity, the meaning, the trust, and the reputation, it's that reputation that does outlast us, right? It outlasts price, it outlasts competition, it definitely outlasts third-party experiences outside the funeral profession, and really makes it meaningful. And that's really all I had today. I leave that baton in your hands now to continue thinking about your brand, to continue communicating about your brand. We at Homestarters are very passionate about that. We're passionate about setting you up to heighten your brand, especially in the ways that we can serve in marketing. And helping you in that area. So please reach out to me, reach out to us. We'd love to have conversations and help in that regard. Stand out, don't fade out. Our purpose is counting on it and important. So thank you for your time.
Excellent, and thank you for joining us. I'm sorry, before we go, let's see if there are any more questions. We'll take another chance to see if, we got a great job, Damon. That's more of a statement, but I'm sure he's happy to hear
Thank you.
And as we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you to hang on for another 5 minutes. What we'll do is we'll switch over to get Aaron Butler on to do his presentation, but let's take 5 minutes to stretch our backs and our faces and our arms, and we will be back with you in a little bit. Welcome back to the Kates-Boylston Marketing Summit. We're going to get ready to have Aaron present to you in the next couple of seconds, but while we're waiting for everybody to get back, we're a little bit ahead of time. It's just 2 o'clock now, and I said 5 minutes 4 minutes ago. So in case someone ran to get some coffee and is carrying a stopwatch, we're going to give it another minute. During that minute, I'm going to tell you that if you missed anything from these webinars, you will be able to see them again tomorrow. If you had registered, if you're just showing up now and you missed the first one, we will be sending you an email with a link, and that link will take you to the recorded version of this show. And if you saw something that you think a colleague would like to know or a friend that would like to know and that they weren't registered, you can forward that to them and they can log on and they can watch the entirety of both webinars, and they can skip back and forth to what they need to see. And of course, you'll be able to get in touch with the speakers that way if you didn't get the speakers' information. So that's where we stand now. And right now we're going to get ready to welcome Aaron Butler on to the webinar. Are you ready to join me, Aaron?
I am.
Excellent. Well, if you'd like to turn on your camera, I will hand over the steering wheel.
Perfect. There I am.
Hey,
What's
welcome.
the best way to share my screen here, Tony?
I'm going to give you the screen sharing power right now.
Perfect.
And then you'll be able to start sharing your screen. And again, if anybody has any questions, please make sure you type them in to the questions box on the right-hand side of your control panel. I will stop him to ask questions if it's appropriate. Otherwise, I'll hold them until the end. But you don't have to hold your questions to the end. Ask them the moment they occur to you, because if it falls in when something he's talking about, I can ask him to go ahead and expand to answer your question. But with that, here is Aaron Butler, and I will catch you on the other side.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. Everyone, thanks for being here today. This is really exciting, and welcome from our studio, which has a little bit of foreshadowing to what we might be talking about today. So as you can see on the screen, what we're talking about today is digital content creation. And I wanted to start with a little bit of a story. If you'll indulge me, I think you'll see why it all makes sense here in a minute. So here's how things begin. So, about a decade ago, I start working in a funeral home. Like so many of us, I kind of fell into this industry, wasn't really expecting it. And I was a few months on this job, and I was showing some promise. My ability was good. I was good at presenting and working with families as a pre-need salesperson. It was going okay. But I was just having some hesitations. I had friends that had just graduated college with me that were doing what looked like cool jobs. They were fighter pilots in the Air Force. Some of them were working these cool business jobs, making lots of money. And I had just moved my little family out to Ohio, working in this funeral home away from any of our family. And I just was having some doubts about whether or not this was the right place for me to be. As you can see in this little picture here, that's me, and that's about how I was feeling. So I was waiting for my appointment to come through the door, and his name was John. And as I watched him walk through, I saw him come through, and I could just see this attitude over him. I greeted him at the door. I said hello. He walked through, barely acknowledging me, and I started to, for the first time, get kind of a sense of the kind of guy John was. So let me paint you the picture. He was not very nice. He was surly. He was impatient. He was tough. He had his veteran's cap on. And I just knew, for me, talking to this old sailor was not going to be easy. And it was about to test my pre-need skills here for the first time, really. So we sat down on this couch, and I have to admit in that meeting that I was trying to be engaged, but I just really wasn't. My heart wasn't in it. My mind wasn't in it. And I think John was just kind of sensing that from me. So as we kept talking, he suddenly started asking me tough questions. I only knew the answers to about 10 questions at this point in my career, and I really didn't know the answers to what he was asking me, and I was feeling intimidated. I was tripping over my words. It was this ugly appointment, and in the intensity of that meeting, I had just lost my confidence, and he had lost any confidence in me. Eventually, he takes the price list and the copy of that memorial guide we had started. He puts it on his veteran's cap and marches out the door flustered. And the funeral home owner, of course, as it always happens, just happened to be in the Rotary Club with this man. And it was within the hour that I got the call from the owner with that complaint about how I had treated this family. It was kind of a big deal for me, and I noticed that there was something that I needed to change. As you can probably guess, I didn't close this appointment, didn't work out for me, and it shook me up a little bit. But the next thing that happened is what really surprised me. John actually reached out. He called me and asked me some more questions, and this time gave me the chance to find the right answers. He even sent me a few emails, and the most remarkable thing about all of it was that suddenly and inexplicably, John was even open to meeting with me again, which I thought was an absolute miracle after the interaction we had just had. So I recommitted. I had this new lease on life in my job. I appreciated the challenge of my role and the impact of doing it well, of what it could have on my family too. And I rededicated myself to this craft. I opened my eyes to the work it would take. I practiced. I worked on my presentation. I practiced in the mirror, and I was ready to just give this a shot. So the next meeting came. The day came, I sat down with John, and I was prepared with all of his documents, the answers to his questions. I had all of it, and I gave him the price. And lo and behold, for the first time, I saw John smile. He shook my hand. He told me we had a deal. It wasn't my biggest policy that I'd ever sold as a salesperson by any means, but this was by far, at that point, my biggest win. And I'll never, ever forget the way that that felt, of having that low and then having that high, of being able to treat this guy the right way. A little while later, the most remarkable thing happened. I came in the funeral home a few days later, and John's name was on the board. I didn't expect it. He was totally healthy, but somehow he had just passed away. It was the first time that someone that I had prearranged had passed away so unexpectedly. And I realized in that moment that there was something missing for me, that I had just not treated him the way that I should have treated him in that whole process. And that it shook me to my core as I realized this kind thing that he had done to me to help me to really have a good experience in my job. So in that moment, I recommitted. I knew that I had to do better. And so I did. I worked hard. I worked hard on my team. I helped to coach and manage others through that process as we try to really instill this kind of experience for other people. Then throughout that process, after a few years, I left the industry. I decided that there was some things I wanted to try out, and I moved back west to try out some things in high technology, to give that a shot in some different startups and things like that. And there's a few things that I realized right off the bat. If you see this chart here, this is a chart showing the adoption of technology as it usually goes, as a standard deviation that it goes for people. And this is something that I noticed. I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but I realized as out in the world that a couple of things were happening. One is that there was so much technology and so much marketing automation and tools happening out in the world that me in this tech startup land, I realized that we were kind of the early adopters and even the innovators in some cases. But looking back on my funeral experience, I realized that I think we're more late majority and even laggards in many cases in the way that we in our industry use technology, in the way that we use modern strategies and marketing and the ways that we do things. And I realized that we're lagging behind. It was the first time that I'd seen that, as I hadn't really worked in any industry up to that time. However, the other thing that I really truly came to realize was that no one in the whole world treats people like we do in death care. No one does. It was so funny to me to be in some of these technology companies and realize that the commitment to seeing this wonderful, best it can possibly be experience for these families, for our customers in that sense, was just not there. They didn't care about that. And so that was the biggest revelation to me as I had this field trip away from the industry, was these two truths. On one side, it was the fact that people don't get treated like they do in death care in other places. We just care about these families, and it doesn't happen in other places. The second thing that I realized was what I explained before, is that we are behind in the way that we utilize technology, and specifically in marketing, where it seemed like as we adopt new marketing principles, it's something that has already been adopted in other industries a decade previous or 5 years previous. And so I wanted to share today what I've noticed to be one of the trending marketing strategies happening in the world right now that is affecting so many industries and so many people, that I know, given this pattern, is about to come to our industry as well, and will make a huge difference. It'll make a huge difference for you if you're able to hop on and do this now and early as an early adopter, or it can make a huge difference if there's early adopters that come before you and we find ourselves back in the laggard position or in that late adopter position. And here's what that strategy is. It's content creation. So often what I'm seeing from people now is that customers more and more are buying less from institutions and more from people, or from people's individual brands. Let me give you a few stats to kind of support what I mean here. 87% of shoppers will pay more for brands that they trust in 2025, meaning that the way that they are getting this trust being built now is through this connection with this individual brand, typically through social media, to an individual, to a person, rather than to an individual or to a institution's brand. Another stat here. 79% of B2C or business to consumer leaders like you believe customers trust their brand, but only 52% of customers actually agree with that. Meaning we probably have a little bit more trust in our own brand that it's hitting with people than it actually is. So I want you to kind of think about these two quotes. There's something shifting. There's something happening where people are going through social media, through stories, to people and trusting what those people say, rather than believing or resonating with what a brand or an institutional brand will say to them. A couple of concepts we've heard today from Damon's masterclass in branding, which I wrote down as he was talking. He said families choose whichever funeral home is in their mind, meaning that he talked about positioning and owning that space in those families' mind of, this is the funeral home that we need to go to. This is the funeral home that'll take care of my family. He also said that oftentimes, especially in marketing, doing the same thing over and over and over can hurt your brand. He gave the example of, those lunch and learn invitations. If it's just the same thing over and over again, it can start to put us in that laggard position. And people are buying differently today, and it can start to wear on them. That's why at my work at Domani Preneed specifically is focused on helping us to look at the holistic way that people want to be marketed to today, and to try to adapt and do better to help our funeral home partners be early adopters. So this is my thesis of what I wanted to talk about today. It's this: your stories today will be the backbone of your market share tomorrow. And if not your stories, then it will be your competitors' stories that are being told. That's why this whole concept of creating content to make your personality and your brand as a funeral home owner, as your staff's brand, that needs to come out into the forefront. Let me kind of give you an example. Let's say that you decide you want to do this scary thing and create some content. And the thing that you're passionate about is, I really feel passionate in the meetings that I've been in over these years of helping adult children realize that they can have these conversations with their parents earlier and find out what they want to have done, and find out how to memorialize them so that these children are not in a position to lack that assurity and have those doubts on that day when they're in the funeral home planning for a deceased parent. And if I, as a funeral home owner, am passionate about that, of helping the adult children with aging parents to have that conversation, then suddenly I can get on to social media like this, and I can start to tell those stories. I can start to share ideas about how to have those conversations. Some quick, easy conversation openers telling stories about when it's worked well, of when someone has had that conversation, and also telling stories about maybe when it hasn't worked well. And being able to share those and tug at the heartstrings, if I'm sharing that content on a regular basis, and these adult children with aging parents in my community are seeing this, when the time comes that they need to go to a funeral home because a parent has passed away, which funeral home do you think they're going to choose? In Damon's words, which funeral home is going to come to mind? It's going to be the one that they built a relationship with the owner, because they were creating content made just for them about how to have this conversation and how to take care of them. They remember the videos of the owner walking through the arrangement conference room and showing them where people sit and the stories that have happened there. They remember the videos or the text posts of, here are 3 things that you can say to your parents to start this conversation, or maybe 3 things you haven't thought of. They can start to share those things, and then those things will come to mind for these adult children when it comes time to make the decision, or better yet, to even get in earlier and to prearrange to have that thing taken care of. So that's the kind of situation we want to create. There are so many benefits to it. Thinking about not just securing market share, but securing value. If you're talking about succession planning, it can be helping the next generation to be in front of the community through social media. It can talk about adding value to your firm. If sales or things are in your future, whatever it is, this is the future of how you can secure and get more market share today and going forward into the future. So with all that said, I want to really kind of point my direction to why I started with this whole elaborate story of this whole animated thing with me. And the reason why is this. It's because all of you have so many stories that tug at human heartstrings. I would beg that I would say our industry has more human interest stories than any other industry. And you have the stories that you can share, like mine with John. You have the stories that you can share that can really tug at people and help them to feel what you're all about, to feel that brand that you have personally. Now, I did all this again to give you a little sense of my brand. It's the person that cares deeply about families, that also cares deeply about using technology to reach more of them, as I try to stand at the nexus of the kind of service we give to people in death care and the technology and marketing strategies available in the world, to put those together to help us to reach more people, to give them that kind of experience that they deserve to have. That's my brand. And that's the whole reason for the story that I shared. And so because of that, and because this effort can be so daunting, I created a guide. It's a boot camp that, if followed, it'll give you everything you need and your staff to give everything you need to get started in creating content. And as a gift for being here on today's webinar, it's a gift for you. And I wanted to give that to all of you. You can scan this QR code. I can work with Tony as well to see if I can get it sent out too to those that are here. But you can scan this QR code and download this guide. I'll have this QR code up throughout the presentation as well that you can see. But using this, you'll be able to be ready to post your first piece of content today. I try to break this down as simply as possible to try to demystify this process, to show you how easy it can actually be. So without further ado, I wanted to get started and walk you through this guide and again, show you just how easy this can be. If I can show you this here, this is kind of what it looks like as you start to dive in and look at your message of what it is that you feel uniquely qualified to share, whatever you're passionate about. It can talk to you about who your audience should be, who you want to be talking to, the outcome that you want the audience to see. Putting those things together to define what your niche is, this people that you're talking to and what you're talking to them about. And then the rest of it is very practical application of some different post formats you can try, some different ways, some different templates that you can use to be successful in doing this. So again, it's for you, it's a gift. I hope you download it and use it. And the rest of my time today, what I wanted to do is walk you through it to show you again, just how easy this can be. So let's get started. Step one is your message. Again, what is it that you feel uniquely qualified to share? Do you feel like an expert on the process of funeral planning? Do you have strong feelings on how families should be treated? Do you have your own personal story or lost story that you want to share as a lesson to others? Some other thoughts. What's your interpretation of more and more families going away from traditional funeral services? Or another, maybe you're passionate about if you were to walk an adult child through how to plan a funeral for the very first time for a parent, what would the steps be? If you were talking to a brand new funeral director on their very first day and they asked you what struggles they might experience in the early years of their new career, what would you share with them? And what advice would you give? These are just some ideas about what that message might be. I'm going to try to play a short video here. Tony, if you can't hear the audio, I'm going to ask you to just pipe in and let me know if you can't hear it. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume that it's working, but it's pretty short. So here we go.
So for getting started, the easiest place to start, and this is where I would recommend start, is with what are the things that you have seen, those moments that are wonderful, that you know you have people crying on your shoulder, saying thank you so much, this is so much easier than I could be. Those are really powerful. Equally as nightmares. The people that come in have they have no idea, and they have to make all these decisions, and you're walking them through it. I mean, this is what we do. This is what we're making. We're all here because this is what our passion is. Those stories, while we feel, we 4 or 5 feet, the general hear about is right. We don't want to talk about it. So being able to just put that out there and say, this is what happened. I know, went through this. I got them happen this way. That I think those are the more to just getting people to go, gosh, that is something.
So this is Liza. She's a powerful example to me of someone that can take a message that they have and share it out into the world and make something of that. She works in the same space as me, typically in pre-need, where she has taken the trainings, her skills, the things that she has gathered over the years, and has put that into books, into content online, and has really opened up opportunities for herself to share this message with salespeople in our industry and other industries. It's been this wonderful thing to watch. But I think her message is so poignant in that we have so many stories that we can share. And the matter of finding what resonates for you is such a great way to determine what your message can be. Now, let me give you a couple of other examples if this is tricky. An example, planning ahead now means your kids won't be left arguing in the parking lot. Maybe that's something that you feel passionate about, is helping people plan ahead so that they're not arguing. Another example, the most meaningful funerals aren't expensive, they're personal. So many funeral directors that I know are passionate about memorializing, about making these personal and powerful for people. Maybe that's a message that they should be shouting out into the community so that by way of those examples that they're sharing of personal funerals, the audience can realize, wow, this funeral home really cares, and they'll give the kind of experience that I or my family deserves to have. Another example, every veteran deserves a folded flag and taps, but you have to ask ahead. Telling your children about your wishes is one of the last gifts you can give them. Another powerful message about pre-need. Funeral services bring healing. How about it in this world where so many people are opting for fewer or no services, to be able to be a voice in your community for why services heal, not just why they matter, but why they heal. To try to flip the script in so many people's minds in the audience of, this isn't about us getting more money to the line items. This is about bringing healing and experience for your family. And to share those stories and to put them out there, it'll change the way that people think about the services that you do bring. Planning ahead now makes all the difference later. Support doesn't stop after the service if you're passionate about sharing those grief resources. So again, as we look at this part of the boot camp here of diving into what your message is, think about that. Take some time to think today, what is it that I'm passionate about? What are the stories I find myself telling over and over to families because it matters to me and I care about it? I want you to ponder on that today, and I think this will be an excellent starting point for you. Okay, step number 2 and 3, we'll combine these together. We're going to talk about the audience and the outcomes you want to have for them. Another way I would say this is for who, so that. For who, so that. This is the formula that we want to use here. So first of all, for who? Who are you writing to? Or who are you talking to in videos that you record? Be specific. If there is a group or persona you feel uniquely qualified to talk to, who can you help most? Who are you comfortable speaking with? It could be adult children like we've talked about, and being very specific there. Maybe it's caretakers, maybe it's people that are busy. It could be veterans and their families, widows and widowers, obviously someone that's already lost their closest person. It could be local community leaders that we're talking to. It could be first-time planners or people that are planner curious, people that want to kind of delve a little bit into the process to learn about it, but are too afraid to take some of those first steps of calling a funeral home or coming into it. Maybe they need a little bit of ease in where they can participate in an anonymous way. It can be for busy families. It can be for families after they've had a service. I want to show you one more video here from Liza. I think she gives such an excellent example of the easiest way that we can use this for who formula.
I think that when we start writing, we always have to, I think, serve a form of ourselves. That's sort of the easiest first place to go. So think about a time that you were struggling related to what you could help people. So for me, when I lost my dad, I was lost. I had no resources, divorce, everything. It was the worst that I deal with now. So when I'm talking, and my message is very clear, even though I'm on Facebook, and because I'm talking to a person, the people who really need to hear it, who really need to see it, are reading it. That's what you never want to feel like you're holding a bullhorn. Whoa, who's going to listen to me? Who's have to say? It really needs to be specific, and the people who need to see it, the people who need to hear it.
I think this is such a powerful way to approach this. It's writing, if you're trying to determine who the audience is, who your who is, the easiest thing that often so many of us can do is talking to a former version of us. If we've gone through an experience, like Liza mentioned, of losing her dad, then maybe it is talking to those people that have lost a parent, that know that maybe they should take care of some arrangements for the other surviving parent or for themselves. Being able to talk to that former self, I think, brings down the guardrails, I think, for so many of us. Oftentimes when we're posting on social media, we think that we have to fill this whole room and talk to all of these people and appease all of these mindsets and desires. But really, if we can do this as if we're talking to one person, especially if it's a former version of ourselves, suddenly this gets so much more personal and so much more powerful, and ironically resonates so much more for the masses when we're talking to just one person. So I think that's a powerful bit of advice in choosing our who, and who we should be talking about is to determine that one person. One note I'll make, and I say this to people all the time, is sometimes we feel like our social media efforts don't land. We get 5 likes or 20 people saw it, or 500 people, saw the content with 2 likes and, 1 share from a member of your staff. But the reality is that if you had a room of 500 people listening to your message, that's a big deal. So if you only have 500 people that come across your posts and see that message, that's a lot of people, especially when you're talking about local community. So I hope that we don't get too down on our efforts if we haven't gone viral with many millions or thousands of views. You just need a few, and to be able to talk to a room full of people with this important message is going to make a difference. So I think this is a powerful framework for choosing who. Now, step 4 is I want to define our niche. So now we've got 3 parts kind of put together here. We have I write about, our message that we've chosen for our audience so that they can accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish. This is the formula. I write about message for audience so that outcome. A couple of examples here for you. I write about planning ahead for adult children so they can avoid conflict and uncertainty when their parents pass away. So again, looking at these parts of this process, we have planning ahead as my message. Our audience is adult children, and then the outcome I want for them is so that they can avoid conflict and uncertainty when their parents pass away. That is that formula. Again, right here. I write about message for audience so that outcome. Okay, next. I write about legacy and storytelling for adult children so they can preserve their parents' memories before it's too late. Think of the powerful stories that you can share about this, of the experiences that you've had firsthand in the funeral home of legacy and storytelling, and sharing those to spark this need and the realization that you can do this for families and these people that read your content. Another, I write about funeral options for seniors so they can feel confident that their wishes will be carried out exactly as they want. Another, I write about funeral benefits for veterans and their spouses so they can receive the recognition and coverage they've earned. Another, I write about grief resources for widows and widowers so they can find strength, hope, and connection after loss. What a noble niche to have. What a noble mission. Another, I write about planning ahead for adult children so they can avoid conflict and uncertainty when their parents pass away. I think I had that already. So good. It's okay to have it twice. I write about the value of funeral traditions for our local community so they can find comfort and healing and gathering together. What a powerful way to be a voice for the community. I write about the arrangement process for first-time planners so they can feel confident and supported walking into our funeral home. Again, if you have a funeral director that you feel is just so good at the arrangement process, what if just once a month, if you had this funeral director take their phone vertically and just film a selfie video as he talks through the entrance to the funeral home and showing that. Not high quality, just something organic and natural. You can walk from the entrance into the arrangement room and show the arrangement room and where people sit, how they look at the screen or at this catalog to choose things, how the process goes, how long it usually takes, what it's like, who should come, who should be there. To go through those details, I promise you that there are so many people, again, planner curious about how this works. And to be able to have that kind of introduction to the process in a safe and comfortable way, like viewing it through the computer or through a phone, I cannot think of a better way to bring down the guardrails for people so they can feel comfortable. And to boot, they're going to know the name of that person. When that funeral director picks up the phone to answer that first call, they're going to know that person. And what a blessing that is. Next, I write about funeral directing excellence for new funeral directors so they can serve families with confidence and grow the profession. Once again, to your excellent funeral director, I know that it is hard to recruit today. It can be difficult to find great funeral directors. But what if in your community there is a mortuary college or it feeds into your community, and you have a funeral director that's so good that they regularly post about how to be a great funeral director? And these students, as they view this content, which there's not a lot of it out there, they see this content and realize your culture. They see the excellence. They see the goals of what they're trying to become in this funeral director. This can become a powerful, very inexpensive recruiting tool for you as you try to grow your firm by bringing in the best talent because they want to come to you because they know that you represent excellence. I love that one. I think it's a great direction to take from this. Okay, still going. Step 5. Now we start to get into the application side of this. Like I showed you here before, let's right here on the top, let's try a top 3 post. Here you'll see some really, really powerful things. So I wrote here, look at your message in step 1 and pick a prompt from the list below to use for your top 3 posts. For example, here are the top 3 skills the world's best funeral directors have, or wondering what to send to your friend who has recently lost a loved one. Here are the top 3 Amazon purchases for any grieving person that they would appreciate. So this is where we start to get kind of in an easy way looking at how we can start creating some applicable content. So again, here are some of those ideas of different categories: tips, skills, traits, goals. It could be different quotes around your message. It could be benefits that come along with your message. Podcasts of, people can listen to this to learn more about your message. Whatever it is, it's an easy way to share, to start to share in an easy way about your message. Here's a couple of examples. Like I said before, here are the top 3 skills the world's best funeral directors have. It could look like this. Number 1, they listen more than they talk. They anticipate needs before families ask. They make complicated details feel simple. Once again, you're showing to the world that you have excellence in funeral directing, but also it can be a wonderful recruiting tool for you as well. Here's another example. To anyone who recently lost a loved one, here are the top 3 podcast episodes I recommend. Griefcast, What's Your Grief? The Doogie Center podcast. Here you're giving just some gold to people that could be grieving right now. I just think this is such a noble thing, and it starts a conversation with you. It can be so helpful in aftercare and opens up and creates a relationship with these families. Not to mention is, maybe your competitor funeral home doesn't do aftercare very well. And if they see your funeral home putting out content like this that helps them in that time of grief, chances are they may want to come to you for their next experience. I think that's so powerful. Now, those are some examples of top 3 posts, which again, I think are just a powerful way to go about this. Now for the next one, step 6, let's try another format. So again, back to this guide, what we're looking at here is a few more templates that I included in this guide for you to try. And you'll start to see so many of these here that I think can be powerful ways, again, to start to get more comfortable with this process. So again, trying another format. It could look like, overcoming challenges. Here's what this would look like here. 2 challenges you will experience in year 1 as a funeral director. Back to this example that I love. Learning to balance compassion with business responsibilities, handling your own emotions while serving grieving families. But overcome these and you'll help thousands of people heal. These are proven hooks. These are proven templates that you can use, again, to help you to get started. Using text formats that have been shown to stop people from scrolling and to be able to start to show this expertise for you in a way that's readable, that's decent copywriting that can help you. And again, all of these can also and should be transformed into video whenever possible. That vertical video format is going to be your most successful medium that you can have on social media, even if it's scary sometimes. Another example, beginner mistakes. Let's see here. Avoid these mistakes when you have to plan your first funeral. Waiting until the last minute to make decisions, guessing what your loved one would have wanted, letting price alone dictate every choice, not involving siblings in the process early. You'll save yourself so many heartaches. So like I said, there are so many examples that I included here, and are so many more that are available, more that I'd be happy to share with you and help you with, but I wanted to include some good ones here that you can see that can be so helpful in this process. And again, this is my gift to you to have. I hope this is so helpful for you. Again, sharing this content can be a little scary sometimes. It can be scary to do what this woman in this picture is doing, to put the phone in front of you, to imagine the people on the other side of the camera, to go through this. And aside from that, I know firsthand how busy all of you and all of us are, especially those of you that run a funeral home. The fact of imagining yourself in the midst of all of your duties to sit down with a camera, to sit down and script out posts, it can feel difficult. So I wanted to offer up one more thing to you, another just gift. I've put together an AI stack or an AI guide that you can use to help you to create this content for you. Again, within a few minutes, you can create, a month's worth of content, no sweat. You can do this in written format to start, to be easy. You can do it now or later into video formats as well, which will be the best way to go about this too. Another kind of principle I wanted to show you as well, again, if you have staff involved or people helping you, is this. This is what I call just like a wagon wheel here, or a hub and spoke. Here in the middle is one example of a long form piece of content, something that, again, if you're talking about, let's say you have a newsletter and you have this for that audience of adult children that you're trying to help have that conversation with their parents. That's the whole focus of what you have. So let's say you create a newsletter around it. In this newsletter, you share stories. In this newsletter, you share tips. Maybe you share some role play examples, whatever it is. You can just create one newsletter. And from that one long form piece of content, let's say you make that 1 month, you can fill the rest of the month based off of little bits or bytes of this long form to create short form. Let's say that you want to create a listicle. This could be a list of, like we talked about, conversation starters that you can share in a social media post. It can be sharing a story, especially in that video format of an example or two of this happening. It can be an observation of maybe you noticing how many people have been coming into the funeral home. It's X% of people come in without having that conversation. Here's what it's like. It could be something contrarian, showing that you have a different opinion of how to go about this in the industry that maybe your competitors or anyone else does. And that can really catch people off guard in a good way sometimes. It can be the past versus the present. Maybe you had a family that came in and didn't have it planned the first time, but did the second, and what that's like. There are so many ways that you can break up just this one piece of content to create all of these short form. And with help from AI, and with help from a staff member or family member, it is incredible how much ground you can gain in being able to create a significant amount of consistent content with very relatively little effort, which I think is an incredible part of this. So with all that said, I just wanted to say congrats. You're a content creator with these tools. Again, with this guide, which I'll include the QR code here at the end again as well. With this guide and with an additional guide, which I'd be happy to get to you, just feel free to reach out to me with that AI stack, that AI guide to be able to create these things. You are on your way to creating content as soon as today, frankly. It can be easy to do. Once again, I just want to emphasize that your brand, your brand as a person, as a funeral home owner, as a member of the staff, is really what's going to resonate tomorrow. And even today, as soon as you can get started. As you look to grow market share, this will set you apart. People will be establishing relationships with you when you're asleep because they see your content online. It resonates with what they need. And you start to take the place in their mind as the funeral home that will serve them in the right way, whether now, in pre-need, or in the future, whatever the case is. I wanted to just share really quickly, this is a photo of a challenge coin that I keep next to my desk. It's been there for about a decade. I keep it there and look at it often because it reminds me of a couple of things. In my experience with John, if you remember that surly old man from the beginning of my presentation, at the end of that second conversation that we had, and I finally got him to smile as he noticed and just was so kind to comment on what he called my excellence. I was so pleased with that reaction from him, and it just meant so much to him. Come to find out that he had a really significant role that he volunteered in with the U.S. Naval Sea Cadet Corps, where he would train young men and young women to be leaders. And I didn't realize it until later, but this is what he was doing for me in the most unorthodox way, was helping me and giving me an opportunity to be better. And at the end of that, he gave me this coin. He put it in my hand with his last handshake and gave this to me to remember the excellence and to always strive for excellence in what I do. This is, again, a constant reminder to me of two things. One is how fleeting life can be and how it can be taken from us unexpectedly in so many ways, and to make the most of it each day. But two is to seek for excellence, especially in whatever work we're doing, but it's specifically in this work that we're doing, to serve families, to help them, to bless them, and to give them all that we can. I recognize that creating content can be a little bit scary. It can be a little bit hard, but this hard thing can make an incredible difference for you. It can make an incredible difference for your funeral home to be able to serve more families. And perhaps this is the time to adopt early this method to reach more families and to do the hard work of being excellent for them in the way that we communicate with them, and to reach them in the places they want to be reached, and to talk with them in the ways that they wish to be talked to, so that we can serve them in the way that they deserve to be served. So again, here's the guide for you, this QR code, as well as it is up here in the top right corner. I'd love to connect with you. You can use, again, that QR code to get that gift. Here's my email. Here I am on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you. And again, this little blue bubble here says connect with me and let me know if you'd want that content AI guide. It's free as well, also a gift. We make these things, again, to help our partners to be forward thinking, to be aware of all that's out there and all the marketing that's happening out in the world, so that you can be as successful as you possibly can at these families. So thank you. So good to be with you here today. I wish you the best in your content creation journey. I hope to hear from you. I'd love to chat even more about this. And I will open it up to questions and turn it back over to Tony, but thanks again so much.
Hello. I actually have a question, if I may ask, only because I've been thinking about this. We've got some stories coming up about, the being online and being a social media presence for your funeral home. And one of the questions that I've come up with to ask other people, and I'll start with you, is does it make sense to literally mention where you are when you're making a video? You talked about only needing to reach 500 people, and 500 people, I mean,
it's a lot.
I live in a little tiny rural town. 500 people is just about half.
Sure.
So making sure that they know that you're not reaching out to everybody, but you're reaching out to them here in their community, even though it's on a platform where people are usually trying to reach everybody, but you're just speaking to your neighbors. Is that a reasonable tactic? Is that something that people should consider, like mentioning that they're talking to their neighbors and not just to anybody, but
yes,
that kind of tailored message?
I think so. There's a lot of facets to this as well. I think, professionals can find professional opportunities by reaching a broader audience. Maybe there's speaking opportunities for you that can help to elevate your presence in the profession and help you there. There could be opportunities to strengthen your brand that way. So I think there is some benefit to being broader. However, I think the most benefit, especially for what we're talking about today, is our local communities, because funeral homes of any business is hyper local. It is so local. I can't think of many more local businesses besides a local single rooftop church.
Right.
It's just a very local business. And so with that said, these are the people that we want to talk to. We want to reach these people, and that's who we want to influence. The other part of that is, aside from potential customers or families, is, what if, and this will happen, there are other organizations in your local community that see your content and say, hey, Mr. Smith, owner of the Smith Funeral Homes, would you come and talk to my Rotary Club, or would you come and talk to my group about what you've been sharing? And it will suddenly open up so many avenues, because for whatever reason, there's this effect that happens when we put content online in any consistency. We become an expert, and we're seen that way, and we will be treated that way as we have doors open to us to talk to people in the community.
Excellent. And it looks like that might do it. I don't see any hands up, but we'll give you guys another minute if there are any more questions. And as I mentioned at the break, if you didn't, for some reason, if you're listening to me now and are still literally not doing the QR code thing, you will get another bite at the apple tomorrow, because we will resend this video out. And of course, we encourage you to send it to friends and colleagues who may have missed it, and that way they can get in touch with Aaron. They can see the entire presentation, and that would be good. So that'll do us for today. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. Is anybody typing slowly? All right. Well, Aaron, thank you very much for coming and for presenting to us. I've got my own set of notes. I think you did a fabulous job.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right. And everybody else, we will see you next time. We have more webinars and virtual presentations and virtual events coming up. You can find all of them at events.kates-boylston.com, and have a great week.